I am so thrilled to have the visionary director who brought so many films to life. I mean, you talk about range. This is the guy who did Thelma and Louise, Gladiator, Black Hawk Down. He is an Emmy winner, a BAFTA winner. He is a 3-time Academy Award nominee who has already been named Best Director of the Year by the National Board of Review. Please welcome Ridley Scott. And of course, the star of... the star of the film, he is of course an Oscar winner for co-writing the screenplay of Good Will Hunting, and he has shown his range in everything from The Talented Mr. Ripley, Saving Private Ryan, and Dogma. For his work in this movie, he was also named Best Actor by the National Board of Review, and he has a Golden Globe nominee for Best Actor. When people talk about how there's no like old style movie stars anymore, I always just say Matt Damon. So much for being here. Thank you guys for being patient. No pressure, but it's going to be worth the wait, I promise. So I just want to start at the beginning. You guys have made not just like one of the most fun films of the year, but just the best. And it's not always common that you find a movie that gets critical raves and the audiences love it too. I mean, was there any part of you that was sort of surprised?
Yeah. All the time. I think we've both been doing this for a while, and I think we both realize how special it is to have this happen, because you love, I mean, not to speak for Ridley, but I will. You love all of the movies that you do. You love them. I remember Clint Eastwood said that to me once. He was talking about, you know, some of the movies that he'd done that didn't do well, and some that did extraordinarily well. And he goes, you know, you love them all equally, and you know why you did them. And so to have something like this happen and this reaction is really is special because it doesn't happen a lot.
And I know this is based on the novel by Andy Weir, which actually I think began as sort of like piecemeal on the internet before becoming a published book. And it's just surprising to me you guys have never worked together, because not only are you both so prolific, you both seem to have an affinity for space movies.
Well, we've never even met.
You're kidding!
No, not only that, he turned me down 3 times.
What? You could have been Gladiator?
There's no way. There's no way. He wanted me to play Thelma.
I see you as Marvel Louise, but I'm not going to argue with him. So the project came to you first, I believe.
Yeah, well, Drew Goddard, the screenwriter, was originally set to direct it, and so I got the script out of the blue. I hadn't read the book and knew nothing about it, and literally just saw a little cover letter and then read the script, and I instantly read it again because I just had this visceral reaction to it. I was laughing, I was really engaged. And then as a writer, I thought, okay, how did he do that? So I turned back to page 1 and started again. And then I met with Drew and really liked him a lot, and he said in that first meeting, I want this to be a love letter to science. I remember him saying that. And then, you know, a couple days later, he got asked to direct this thing that he'd been working on for kind of it's kind of his big pipe dream, was this Sinister Six comic book movie, and so he bowed out. And so I thought, well, I guess we'll kind of let this go, and maybe he'll come back next year or when he's done with this job. And then about a week later, I got a call that Ridley had been sent the script and that he was interested, so I jumped in my car and raced over to his office.
And when you were sent the script, I mean, did you think Matt was attached, or was that part of the appeal?
I've never heard this before.
No, I get a call and say, we got this thing, you want to read it? And I said, yeah, what's it about? I always like to say in a word, in a line, tell me what it's about. Because if you can't tell them a paragraph, there's a problem, isn't it? I think so. So yeah, they just said, this is very interesting, Matt Damon's attached to it. So I immediately thought, yeah, I'll read it. I read it that night, the following morning, I called up and I then had to audition with Matt. I had to read my lines, and we swap notes on how many takes I do and how many takes he expects, stuff like that.
It was in that meeting that he told me he was going to shoot 4 cameras at a time.
Wow.
And I was like, that's impossible. And he goes, no, because I just shot Exodus in 74 days. That's just irresponsible.
Now, and from what I understand, it was a very brief meeting. Like,
yeah, I mean, it was the only thing that I brought up to him that I just wanted to flag for him was the Interstellar of it all, because I'd done this cameo because I really wanted to work with Chris Nolan, and I just jumped at the chance to work with him, but it was a guy stranded on a planet by himself, and then I took, basically it hadn't worked for 18 months except for this like little cameo, and I said it might be odd to follow up, playing a guy stranded on a planet by himself, by playing a guy stranded on a planet by himself. But once I explained, it hadn't come out at that point, so I kind of talked to Ridley about what it was and how different it was and how tonally it's just a completely different movie, and also how I wanted to kind of corner the market on guys stranded on a planet.
Speaking of, I'm sure you've seen the meme that's gone around that we have spent a lot of money rescuing you from space in movies.
Yeah, that was good. I got somebody sent me that, and it was a picture of me and Private Ryan, and then a picture in Interstellar, and a picture in The Martian. And I think that's kind of a euphemistic way of putting it, because the thing that I got sent said, "How much bleeping money are we going to spend saving this guy?"
And I mentioned at the beginning, you guys have both done, not just movies in space, you've done remarkable movies set in space. I guess it's pretty safe to say you're space fans. Would you make a good astronaut?
No. No.
I make a what?
A good astronaut.
Absolutely not. I'll be bored to death in 3 seconds. But I mean, that said, it's a very, very tough job. Very tough job. And you've got to trust a lot of people who are going to put you up there that what they've done is the right thing. So there's this club of trust between NASA, JPL, and the guys who fly the machines.
And I know that this movie is actually, the science in this movie is way more accurate than you would ever expect for such an entertaining film. I mean, did you have consultants who sort of were on set to make sure everything was accurate?
No. No, you use that, and you use a little bit of your imagination. And, people always say that, what books did I read about the Roman Empire? I said, none. I just walked around the National Gallery, looked at a few paintings. There's one great one, I think, what's his name, the guy who let Rome burn while he played the fiddle. That was about it. But in this, I trusted the book, I trusted the screenplay, trusted the intelligence of both parties, and thought, thank God I don't have to do any research on mathematics. I know what to do with the rest of it.
But what about for you as the actor? I mean, just to even wrap your mouth around some of these things you have to say, you had to have done some research.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the most helpful thing that happened in pre-production was that Ridley sat me down, and it was the two of us. We had a few days together in a room with a couple pencils and 2 screenplays, and we sat, and he went through moment by moment exactly what he was going to do, so that every single thing, every decision was made in pre-production. I understood. He was so good at communicating what his vision of the movie was, not only to me, but then to all of his department heads. Everybody was very clear about what he wanted, and like the best description of directing I think I've ever heard Steven Soderbergh said to me when we were doing Ocean's 11 like 15 or 16 years ago, and he said it's like making a giant mosaic from 1.5 inches away, and that really is an accurate description of what it's like to shoot a scene, but you have to be aware of the role the scene plays and how it fits into the kind of the architecture of what you're doing and what is this big picture. And the director is the one person who has to know exactly what that big picture is. So for him to be able to, before he'd shot a frame, explain to me, and then in the pencils that he'd just pick them up and he'd start drawing frames. He goes, well, I'm going to be on about 35 millimeter lens. I'm going to be about 5 feet away from you. This is what it's going to look like. And he would just draw the picture, and I'd go, oh, okay, so that corresponds to this scene. It was just being armed with that kind of information, I think, as an actor, and really for any of the kind of different disciplines involved in making a movie, the one excuse you ever have is, well, I didn't know what movie I was in. I didn't know, the director didn't communicate. I thought this was kind of a scene where I should be breaking down and crying, and I'm in a comedy, But when a director can do that, there's literally no excuse for everybody not showing up and doing and carrying their weight, and that's when it really gets exciting, and that's why he works with the same people over and over again, because they don't ever want to give up a chance to work with him, because he can communicate that vision so clearly.
He's being very nice. He's actually clever.
So much has been made about the fact that a lot of your performance is kind of a one-man show. You're acting opposite yourself, or speaking directly into a camera. How did you prepare him for those scenes? Was there any specific direction, and did it feel unnatural, or maybe actors are used to talking into mirrors?
I am a raging narcissist, so it felt very natural. We talked about it a lot, because obviously that was the challenge. That was one of
the landing ground. When you look at all the scenes that occurred during the movie, and you talk, which we did, went through blow by blow, and literally itemized, even said, how emotional will this scene be in context? So it became quite technical initially, because you're working on your experience and formal experience, both of us, and therefore great intuition about what do you think that will be. And yeah, I think to go for that here, tears or just sadness. I mean, literally simple. The simpler the discussion, the better. And then he plans his pathway through that, and I plan my pathway. So working side by side. But what's interesting is that sometimes it doesn't quite go the way you plan it, and that's where the wonderful thing kicks in. The human being playing the role and the emotion taking over, which happened, I think, once beautifully during the film. And it wasn't planned that way, but it came out that way.
Is that the scene where you're taking off in the rocket, essentially? I love this story, so I'm sure they don't want to hear me tell it. So would you mind sort of explaining how that worked?
Well, yeah. We knew there was a moment where you had to see him crack, and it was scripted in a different place. And when we got to shoot that scene, it didn't feel right, and it didn't feel right to Ridley either. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes it doesn't feel right, and the director says, no, it is right, and you just have to defer, and you have to just trust them and go for it. But it didn't feel right to either of us, and we didn't want to push it. And we said, we'll just find another place for this kind of crack to happen. And then we were shooting that scene where I'm about to take off, and he did a really tricky thing, which was the rest of the cast, Jessica and everybody had already left. They had wrapped, and it was just Ridley and I carrying on in Budapest. But what he did was he got the sound of, they shot their side of the scene already, so he got all of the sound, and he piped it into my helmet, but didn't tell me he was going to do that. So I was lying there, and suddenly I heard the voices of my friends, and it just struck me that I hadn't heard another voice for years. I'd been communicating by email, and suddenly I not only heard their voices, but I heard, they were doing that kind of astronaut speak. It's almost like a military, like we have comms check 5 by 5, like that kind of stuff. But it's like the people who are going to come to save you. And these people had come and done this incredible thing and sacrificed a year of their lives to come for me. And I just went, and it was because of the way Ridley designed this thing, and I think we did 1 or 2 takes, and that was it. But it was great because none of it's planned or forced, and it's just about him creating an environment, and it's really the dream of an actor, because you just have to show up and be relaxed and know what the scene is about, and then let the experience kind of carry you.
Did you plan that when did you realize you were going to do that?
Well, I think it's part of my job to be as helpful as possible, and part of that is being as clear as possible, and also part of that is leaving yourself open to things going to happen, and that's where you key in, because after a certain amount of experience, all ego goes out the window, and you're looking at something you haven't thought of, and this seems to be the place for it. And it's very difficult for any director to go up to an actor and try and get him emoted by description or discussion. best to leave that to the actor, right? And if it's right, it's going to be right, because I think sentimentality is a bad word. Sentimental is a good word, but sentimentality is unearned emotion, which I think is a great definition of something which is corny, right? When it's earned, that was earned. The moment was earned. At the end of it, he did it once. I went, damn, you know? And I walked over to him, and he was sitting there vaguely embarrassed. I remember that he said, "Is that a bit too much?" He was actually doing this. I said, "No, it was fine." You want to go again? Yeah, okay. So you go again, but that was it, wasn't it? Yeah.
You used the first take?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And you only did 2 total?
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And obviously because
We're really lazy. We have 4 cameras at once. I mean, we just want to do these things once or twice.
Yes, this looks like a very lazy movie, like, you can tell. And I actually would be remiss if I didn't talk about the rest of this cast, because it's just an amazing ensemble from top to bottom, people who show up for one scene. And some directors don't like being called an actor's director, but you have a way with actors from all different backgrounds, all different levels of experience. What is the secret to that, communicating with actors?
Well, that's a complete 180 turnabout, because when I started off, I was the director who famously could not talk to an actor. So, and I tend to try and encompass them into, I would hide the fact that I didn't know what to say in the fact that I really knew what to do visually. So I could cook the thing, the story, and then hope that they could deliver, right? Then, because of that, I suddenly started paying great attention to casting. If you cast really well, all your time spent in casting, in a funny kind of way, almost half the work was done for you. Because I had this weird dream that when I met with an actor, said, "Okay, you got the job." They go, "Oh, terrific." That then they're going to sit at home waiting for me to then meet with them and tell them what to do on the set. That doesn't happen. They go away and they really work it, plan it. And that's where the interesting bit comes. Pre-rehearsal, they'll come in and say, "I thought about this, what about that?" So suddenly they're actually talking about their character. That's when I know I'm being taken along, and I can coast alongside and adjust if I have to. And that can be dead simple, up a bit, down a bit, too slow, too quick, literally. Don't, if any directors in this house, do not oversprachen. Actors gets really boring, right? They're dying to go, right?
No, I'll never forget watching it inside the actor's studio years ago with Sean Penn, and they said, what do you hate the most as an actor from a director? And he said, "Too much chatter." I thought that was the perfect answer.
Yeah, mostly they're locked and loaded. Just give them a go and let them show you what they have thought in their head about who this is. That's great. Let them loose, watch and go, wow. Because you always look for to be surprised. If I'm surprised, I just shut up after that and concentrate on the light.
And you're pushing the limits, not just emotionally, but technically in this movie, which is, considering all your accomplishments on film, like, it's amazing that you can still shock and surprise us with new things. What ended up being the hardest part of making the movie for each of you? Maybe from a technical standpoint or an emotional standpoint? You're probably sick to death of potatoes.
I really was, when I thought, okay, I'm going to be in a spacesuit, I'm going to be in the desert, this is going to be tough. It really wasn't. It was one of the easiest shoots I've ever been a part of. It was just because he was so prepared. It was just, we just got up and executed exactly what we talked about every day, and the only surprises that came were good ones. So no, I feel guilty. I think, actors are supposed to talk about how hard their job is, we actually went to Mars. I lived by myself on Mars. But the truth is, when you're with a master director, everything gets easier.
And for you?
What was the question?
The hardest part of making this movie, working with Matt Damon.
It's not really. It's fun. To me now, making movies is fun, and it's exhilarating. And I still consider myself to be privileged that they keep coming back for more.
I'm going to take a couple questions from the audience. comments? If we have time, I think we have time. Let's start right down here in the front.
Was the whole film shot in Budapest?
Whole film shot in Budapest?
Yeah, the cocktail bar and no, in Budapest, studios are spectacular. They're brand new studios, giant stage. That stage, the main stage that we were on, is bigger than the Bond stage. The cubic capacity, that's probably the biggest stage in the world. To give you an example, 67 feet to the gantry. Normally it's like 45 feet, so it's that kind of scale. So we put it at 87%, 85% in Budapest, and I knew a place in Wadi Rum where actually Lawrence was made, and we did the desert there.
So yeah, we were in Germany for 3 or 4 weeks, which was spectacular. I mean, all of those, none of that's CGI. I mean, that's, Wadi Rum, I cannot recommend it highly enough to anybody who likes to travel. It's absolutely beautiful.
I'm going to take one from the back, if they're way back there.
Nancy, this is a question for you. I wanted to ask, while you're acting, especially in a film like this when you're by yourself, you do such a good job of invoking emotion. What is going through your mind while you're reciting your lines? I mean, what is it like for you? Are you immersed in this world? Are you kind of thinking about what's for lunch on the... what is going through your mind? What is it like to be you while you're this character?
Here, this is funny because you just reminded me of something. About 15 years ago, my assistant at the time, for Christmas, gave me the gift of Dinner with Morgan Freeman. I talked about him, I guess, so much. And she said, I'll just call his assistant, and you know, and so she surprised me. So I went to have dinner, but it was like, for Morgan, it was like kind of a Make-A-Wish dinner. You know? The actor shows up, and I'm just like, wow, this is amazing. And I asked him while we were having this dinner about this dolly shot, and they push in on him in this Shawshank Redemption, this moment on the top of the roof, and he's sitting there and he's looking at Tim Robbins, who's just done this incredible thing. He's just looking at him. And I said, "What? Do you remember what you were thinking about when you did that?" And he literally said, "Oh hell, I was probably thinking about lunch." So it's funny that you should ask that.
Good Morgan Freeman, by the way.
Well, eventually I did work with him.
Yeah,
So,
I know.
but look, if it's going right, you should feel you should be relaxed, and you should feel, you know. And again, this was almost like rehearsing a play, because there was so much stuff, and we'd been living with it for about 6 months, so it felt very kind of fluid by the time we shot, and that's not always the case. I mean, a lot of times, you know, there are all these script changes coming in, or you know, and you're a little wrong-footed some of the time. But we kind of had enough time to do our work, and again, Ridley's clarity made all the difference. So no, it's just fun. It was really a joyful experience. So I guess if there was anything I was feeling, it was probably some measure of joy.
You know, he is so modest. It's one of his best graceful parts of his character. But I'll just give you an example of what sometimes happens. I was doing a film, I'm not going to say what it was, but the actor was very, very good. He came up to me at the end of 2 takes and said, "You've got to make him look at me in the eyes when I'm talking. He's not looking, he's looking over my shoulder." So I keep moving like this to get his attention. And he said, "What's going on?" I said, "Well, I have to do that because there's big placards come up behind you, because this guy can't remember his lines." It's on Blade Runner. Good old Joe.
I never heard that about Harrison Ford. That's the
And I'm curious, has there been, I mean, I know there has been, but directly for you guys, much feedback from the scientific community and NASA?
Oh yeah, they love it. Yeah, NASA. The book was already a must-read at NASA, on a level of not instruction, but on the fact that he seemed to get it right, seemed to get the characters right, and seemed to get the the exchanges between NASA and JPL, who those people were, and so it was a book to read in NASA and JPL. So when it was off and running, and he's their favorite astronaut, I mean, I could just make a call up to NASA, can I talk to us? Yes, and he'd come, sir, hello, head of NASA here, immediately. What do you want to know? What rocket? I'm talking about landing ships and rocket ships taking off from NASA Mars evacuation vehicle. That's Tesla's. Now, Tesla's designing certain stuff, I think, in conjunction with them to fundamentally, he's come up already with the rocket, which is reusable as opposed to those things are one.
It just landed.
It
just landed.
It just landed. So it's multi-purpose. It keeps going up and down. Brilliant.
I actually spoke to somebody at JPL who loved this movie, talked about not just, not loving the science, loving the emotion, and the thing he said that I loved so much was, your character is a great representative for using intelligence to get out of these situations. He's like MacGyver in space. And please thank them because it made being an engineer feel pretty sexy.
That was one thing we said when we met all those engineers.
Well, again, I want to congratulate you guys on an amazing movie. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you guys for being a great audience.